Hi, welcome to Modern Times with Cal and Mike.
I'm Cal Davenport.
And I'm Mike Doherty.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about WikiLeaks, who have been in the news for the last few months. As you know, they released tens of thousands of classified documents from the United States government. And there have been people on both sides of the aisle on this, trying to decide whether or not this is a positive thing, is this a negative thing? So we're going to present both of those sides to you today so you can make your own mind up about this.
And we're not going to really dive into the legal issues, whether he should be tried in the U.S., whether he's outside of U.S. jurisdiction.
Because frankly, we don't really know a whole lot about international law, so...
Well, yeah, we don't know that, and that's an entire episode unto itself.
That's true.
So, I'm going to I'm going to present my side first. I tend to be a little bit more, let's say anarchist in political leanings, but I'm generally always am on the side of the people first until the government can prove otherwise. So, basically, I think in general it was a good thing. It's borderline for me. And the reason why is I think it keeps government accountable. I think there were probably some things that were released in there that, they probably could endanger some lives of military personnel, and it definitely altered some relationships we have with foreign governments. But in the big picture, and I guess this is kind of cold when you're speaking about the individual people, and I guess I don't care about them. Well, I tend to look at things in the big picture. I think it's a good thing that basically keeps government accountable. There's other things I think that came out in there as well that were important for the American people to know. For instance, talking about the insurgents or the terrorists in Afghanistan. I think there's been some suspicion on the part of the U.S. news media and people that Pakistan has been supporting directly or indirectly the insurgents, and these
leaks. This is Pakistan, our ally.
Yeah, Pakistan, our ally. These leaks show that the Pakistani, basically a military spy agency called the ISI, has been more or less offering these Al-Qaeda fighters a harbor in Pakistan and allowing the Pakistani security forces to just turn a blind eye to them, and promoting in return the offensive in Afghanistan against U.S. and coalition forces. And I think allowing the American people to know about that is really important, in my opinion at least. I mean, I've wondered about it for a while, and now that there's some pretty concrete evidence to show that that's what's happening, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel a little bit less in the dark. For me, that's important. The other thing that they talk about in these is the U.S. has been leaking nuclear secrets about Great Britain's nuclear arsenal to Russia to help win Russian support.
Speaking of allies, by the way.
Yeah, speaking of allies, Britain, which is supposedly one of our closest allies, we've been leaking their secrets to the Russians, to get some sort of, I'm not very familiar on the treaty that they were trying to get passed.
It was on nuclear weapons, but basically they did it so that the Russians would be a little bit more
open, inclined to sign it, and I just don't think that's a good thing to do to our most important ally, whether it's really going to have a major strategic issue or not. I think there's generally been a policy in Britain to keep that secret because it is a smaller nation, whereas the U.S. and Russia have been relatively open regarding their nuclear arsenals. I think Britain's generally been more closed about it, so that because their arsenal's probably smaller, they don't want people to know how many they have, to kind of create that air of suspicion and mystery, so that people just don't really want to mess with them because they're not quite sure exactly how to respond to it. So having these these statistics about, I think specifically what it was serial numbers of nuclear weapons that were being maintenanced and serviced by U.S. companies or the U.S. government or somebody in the U.S. They leak these serial numbers out, which basically can give the Russians or any other country that is interested in the information and intelligence to figure out how many nuclear weapons they have, kind of indirectly. It's another way they can find out. So anyway, it's just not a very good thing for the British. And I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it was kind of a douchebaggish thing for us to do. I mean, it's just, I just don't, I'm not a big fan of Britain personally. You know, nothing against the Brits, but I've never been really wild about it, you know, about that country, considering my Irish heritage. But you know, I just.
I was just about to ask what country you were.
Yeah.
Crazy about.
Anyway, so I just, you know, but I still think it was the right thing to do. And there's one other thing I wanted to cover, in my view, regarding the WikiLeaks as more or less a good thing, is talking about how Israel was very supportive of the current, and I think possibly soon to be president. Basically, he's the current vice president of Egypt, and possibly soon to be either the president or just, you know, the leader of Egypt until elections happen. Of Solomon is the vice president, and Israel has been supportive of him. Not necessarily a bad thing, especially in the view of Western eyes, but I think, I don't know, I think this kind of gets onto a little bit different topic, but I think having Western influences, I mean, I know Israel's in the Middle East, but you could consider it almost a base of Westernism there. And I think people in the future, if something happens and Solomon ends up being a long-term leader of that country, there could be some, say, increased hostilities towards the U.S. and Israel as far as the general Middle Eastern viewpoint that the West has been meddling in their affairs way too long. So anyway, I just think that it's probably good that that came out too. So anyway, that's my long short story on why I agree with it. But Cal will discuss his side. I think he differs a little bit.
Well, the thing that I want everybody to keep in mind about this is that we all believe that government, especially at the national level, is meant to keep us safe from enemies, foreign and domestic. And a lot of times, operations that our military and intelligence community and other groups perhaps that they conduct for our safety have to be secret, and our enemies can't know about them. And part of the problem here is, if we take, for example, the leak on the British nuclear arsenal, or the leak that the U.S. gave up of the information to the Russians. At the same time, this very same information could have been leaked via WikiLeaks itself, theoretically speaking. The Russians may have found out about England or the United States nuclear arsenal or some other country via what was leaked here. And
Let me just cut in and say real quick that I'm not sure I was clear about why I agreed about the information about the U.S.
Okay.
leaking the information to Russia. I think it's good that people know that the U.S. did this, and it's good that the English know and the British know that
right.
the U.S. did this. It's almost like a slap in the face, like, you know, how dare you? You know, I mean, obviously I'm a U.S. citizen, and you know, it seems kind of silly for me to be like, you know, well, you know, bad government, you know, my own government, but
right.
I just
But at the
basically.
same time, you know, if they are.
Yeah.
Again, dealing with our issues internationally, we don't want them screwing over our allies, so that, you know.
Well, yeah, and it's just not the right thing to do. I think it's
Obviously,
just not an honorable.
And so we want.
Good thing to do.
It's not a good representation of us.
Oh, certainly, no.
Absolutely. But
Anyway, sorry.
at the same
I
time,
didn't make sure
either
that's
way, the information could get out, and it's either way we understand that it's damaging to our allies or to us if that information gets out. But a lot of these cables deal with lists. For example, like the State Department, for example, the BBC reported that they asked all U.S. missions abroad to list installations whose loss could critically affect U.S. national security, so they would know, what was most important to be protected and everything. That list was one of the things WikiLeaks leaked. Includes like pipelines, communication, transport, cable locations, satellite sites, system plans. And Press Secretary Robert Gibbs says it's not the content as much as it just the names, operations, logistics, sources. All of that information is out in the public, has the potential to do harm. Honestly, Assange and everyone else involved in WikiLeaks, they don't necessarily know what could really do harm to a country and what couldn't in the context. I mean, they have to go through all the files and contextualize this to know what could compromise an operation and what couldn't. And honestly, I think that he's not, as much as he wants to be a watchdog, it's not necessarily prudent, because he doesn't have the knowledge of what should be out there and what shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think he really read through most of these. I think they just kind of got published in a big bulk.
It seemed like,
and how could you read through thousands of documents?
Yeah. That those
Everybody
like,
scanned over a brief amount of it. Yep, click. Whatever they do with computers to get that many documents out.
So in the ideal world, like we both seem to have some legitimate concern. What in the ideal world would this look like as far as keeping the government accountable but keeping us safe?
Well, you'd have to find some sort of middle ground, but I think that's in the long term, at least, is going to be very, very difficult to come to. You might be able.
Who exactly is going to keep them accountable in the government who's not accountable to us? In other words, I mean, like if the information never gets to us, how do we know if it was good or bad? Like if there's too much information or not enough?
Well, that's the thing, yeah. Like who draws that line? And then in the long term, what I'd be concerned about, again, because I try my best to see the big picture. How do you keep it balanced? How do you keep it from the pendulum from swinging too far to one side, too far to the other? There's not really, as you said before, there's not really a way to regulate that. So you could have things that are far too transparent and things that are far too secret. Who's to keep that line?
Right. Is it a regular citizen? Is it a citizen of Australia? In this case, Assange is. Is it a system in an institution in our government? Who does it? That's the question. But that's for you to decide, because, as you can tell, we have problems with all of them, and there's two sides to this that it could swing either way. So
that's why we're here to present how we see things and allow you to make your decisions accordingly. So I think that's pretty much all we wanted to cover for this episode. Another short episode. We're trying to keep these to 15 minutes. We understand a few of our previous episodes that were 2 or 3 parts were a little bit long for some people. So
thank you for bearing with us once again.
Bearing with us, it's it's almost an honor for them to be able to watch our show.
That's
right?
what
I'm just kidding. Anyway, so this is I believe this is our conclusion here for this
Thank you for watching episode number 6. Hopefully you'll tune in next week.
Peace.